For those of you that don't know by now, this is the Squirrel Marketing Podcast.
Squirrel Marketing. It's where we talk about all kinds of good stuff in marketing, but then we may squirrel off in one direction or another.
And no one knows what direction that will be.
Nobody knows, I swear. So last time we talked about what marketing was and what marketing wasn't, right? And it was kind of a, just a reality check because people didn't know. So they say sales and marketing and they think it's synonymous, and it's really not.
They complement each other, and I think that's what people really need to...
Right.
Yeah.
Marketing is putting good clothes on. Sales is before you go in for the kiss, right?
Right.
So this time I thought it'd be nice if we kind of discussed foundational stuff that everybody should know already, or maybe they forgot.
Yeah, and this is something that you've talked about a lot with us in the marketing team is doing these kind of things, that what you call a SWOT analysis. So if you could just kind of go in and just explain what that is at a base level, and then kind of dig deeper into that.
Absolutely, yeah. So a SWOT analysis is basically, it's an acronym. It stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And it's an analysis of yourself or your business or whatever it is, whatever entity it is that you're wanting to analyze, what it is you're developing a marketing plan for. So in the case of a company, strengths and weaknesses are internal, and opportunities and threats are external. So internal strengths and weaknesses might be for a company. It might be your strength might be that you have a premium brand name, that it's recognizable. People know it when they hear it, and that it has a good connotation or a good reputation. So some weaknesses might be maybe you have a quality problem that you've identified, and maybe you've become known as the cheap, low-quality product on the market, and that would be a weakness. And so when you analyze these things, you start to look at yourself in the mirror, basically.
And just real quick, I mean, those strengths and weaknesses could be anything within the company, right? Like, if you have a lot of money, that can be considered a strength. If you're lacking financially, that could be considered a weakness. That kind of thing. It's not just constrained to the people and the product. It's all the factors involved.
Yeah, well, it could be capitalization, like you were saying. It could be that you have awesome employees, dedicated, long-term employees. That could be definitely one. It could be that you have a nice environment to work in. It doesn't have to necessarily be how you present yourself to the public. It can also be basic foundational stuff as to work environment, like I was saying. It could be that you have a great health plan or whatever. But you can separate those into further internal and external features, like inside the company and outward perception, But really, it's a brainstorming session. This whole SWOT analysis thing is a brainstorming session where you can identify your strengths and weaknesses, and there's no constraints. You can say, okay, I smell good. Well, okay, great. That has nothing to do with your business, but okay.
Now, when you do these, do you find that companies are less than honest about what their strengths and weaknesses are because they really don't want to be told what their weaknesses are?
Now, here's where we may squirrel off in another direction. Yes, I think they're lacking the ability to be honest and look in the mirror, like a lot of us are. And you've got to get over yourself. That's one of the things in our society now. Everybody's leaning towards narcissism. We got like narcissists everywhere, little narcissists running around going to school. Everybody's all concerned about themselves and how they feel about stuff. Nobody really cares how they feel about things.
Right.
And so everybody grows up now. These kids are growing up thinking that everybody cares how they feel. Which they don't. So it's good for people to do this exercise, and I think this is the basis for any counseling session somebody might do. Like, for instance, you go to a marriage counselor. First thing they do, let's check reality. Let's look in the mirror, everybody, and let's go to you, Jeffrey. Let's look in the mirror and tell me, and then let's go to you, Laura, or whoever. And so you have to do a reality check and look in the mirror.
Fortunately, I'm not married yet, so I don't have to worry about that.
Fortunately, yes. But, I'm in a long-term marriage, and it's been pretty amazing. I don't deserve her, for sure. But she's amazing, and so I frequently have to look in the mirror and say, how am I being the best husband I can be? And how am I being the best person or friend that I can be to her? And so in business, I'm always thinking about the other person. This is something that the Rotary Club is really famous for. They always think of what's the greatest good and how is it a win-win situation when I make a decision. I don't know, there's terminology my brother would know it. He's real big into it, but it's basically, is this a good decision or not for everyone involved? And so in a company, you can't even come to that decision until you know who you actually are.
Right.
And as a company, if you can't admit, at least to yourself, the weaknesses in your organization, then you're a narcissist and you're naive.
So I mean, that's probably the biggest key to, creating a marketing plan and creating just a plan of upward trajectory is really defining what those weaknesses are and how to attack them, right?
Right, exactly. And that's one of the biggest, motivator. Well, money was the motivator for this show, but where the CEO would go into the workforce and work with the people and disguise themselves like they didn't know who they were. So the CEO is working alongside the factory worker and listening to him bitch about the CEO.
Right.
And it's a good wake-up call. It's like, oh, I didn't realize that all the executive team taking up all the good parking spots was a pain in the ass for everybody else. I didn't realize that was a sore spot for these people that work on the front lines. And so it's a good wake-up call when you do a survey. You do always anonymous surveys. But to do surveys, how do you like your job? And, and tell us how you feel, really. Don't hold back. Please don't hold back. And I would emphasize please, because I want to know exactly how I'm being perceived. And then I look at my honest intentions versus how I'm perceived, and I see whether or not there's some kind of misalignment there. If there's a misalignment, maybe I'm not presenting myself the right way. Because if I'm being perceived as something I'm not, it's my fault for the most part. It could be their fault for just being touchy, but a lot, and sometimes there's a perception that's a little stronger than my intention, and I'm fine with it. Because, in some cases, people need to get tough skin. But in a lot of cases, I didn't intend it to be that way.
Right.
Back to my wife, I sometimes will say something, and she takes offense to it, and I didn't mean it that way at all. But I can see how it came off, and maybe it came off from some other deep-seated resentment or some kind of something going on inside me. And I didn't mean it to come out to her, but it's present in other areas. So there's always ways that happens. But you got to be honest with yourself and look in the mirror. And the strengths and weaknesses part of this, it's really a sit down with a glass of scotch or wine or ice water, whatever you drink, and just brainstorm with yourself. Turn your phone off, turn the TV off, don't listen to anybody.
That's what I was going to say. It doesn't have to be this formal meeting kind of thing, right? I mean, it can be a thing where you're sitting there at night, like you said, a glass of scotch, a glass of wine, whatever it may be, and just thinking about, reflecting on what you believe you need to improve on.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's two things. Number one, if you're the business owner or the head of the business or somebody high up, a leader, then you should sit down by yourself and really soul search and brainstorm and write lists. You really should. And then you should have the meeting with the upper leadership, the upper management, and discuss this and get their feedback. And then you should do a survey company-wide to all of your employees. What is your perception of these things? Please be honest. It's anonymous. And then you should compile all that into data and see the consensus and see if it lines up with your introspective analysis. So if you can think about things with a glass of scotch by yourself and you see everything one way and everyone else seems to see things a different way, it's exactly what we were just talking about, where my intentions didn't line up with the perception. And so the first thing that you could do, it's really easy if you're a one-person company. But if you're a very large company, it's harder. It takes more time. But it's the very first thing you should do before you do any planning or strategic anything.
So once you identify those strengths and weaknesses, I guess then you move on to the second half, which is the opportunities and the threats. So I guess that can be a broad topic too, because anything, I guess, that can, quote unquote, threaten the upward trajectory of your company is considered a threat. And that could be a whole bunch of different things, whether it's the economy, it's a competitor, all those kind of deals, right?
Yeah, it could be anything. So the external part of opportunities and threats is, what are your opportunities in the industry to take advantage of the time that you're in right now? What is it? What are your opportunities with being able to save money on human resources or fixed assets, or what opportunities do you have to enter a new market or to boost the market you're in or to gain market share? What are your opportunities to increase the quality of your product or your service? What things are happening in the near future? For instance, is there going to be a higher consumer demand for your product? Are your competitors relatively complacent about innovating? What about growth in foreign markets or new social trends? So these are all things that you might want to consider when you look at opportunities, because those are external. Yeah. So, and then the other side, the threats, is, okay, what will keep me from achieving my mission here? What is it that might hurt me? A new competitor, or we're going into a recession, or maybe we're overextended on our credit lines. And that's not just an internal weakness. That might be limited financial resources for an internal weakness, but on a threat, it might be running out of a credit line.
Yeah.
It might be a threat. Government regulations may be a threat. You're building a highway and all of a sudden you run into an indigenous tract of land. That's a threat. So there's a lot of those kind of things. New taxes. Anything that could hurt your ability to move forward would be a threat. And that would be not something happening now, because that's kind of a weakness.
Right.
A threat is something that could happen
in the future.
Right.
So after you do these analysis, what the end goal of a SWOT analysis is to put the company in a better position to succeed. But is there a specific timeline that you look at as, how you want to see these goals accomplished in, or anything like that? Or is it just a thing that's a slow process and it's going to happen over time?
Both. Yeah, both. Because some of these things can be fixed pretty quickly. You could make some alignment changes. You could eliminate some positions, free up some capital, or there's things you can do. But if you can realize your weaknesses, then you should always be working on turning those into strengths internally. And you can have a meeting with everybody and say, here's the weaknesses that we've identified, and we need an action plan to move forward. And the reason why it's called an action plan is because it needs to be actionable. It needs to be reasonable.
You can't set these super lofty goals and expect that they're going to be accomplished.
No. And that's why people say to reevaluate your goals often, because you want to make those goals something that's close enough to now that you can achieve it. Little steps. How do you eat an elephant? One little bite at a time. But so, with regards to your opportunities and threats, you also have people that you meet with about taking advantage of the opportunities, such as your marketing managers and people like advertising people. How can we take advantage of the opportunities that are coming up? And those are positive meetings. And then there's the threats. Well, you might meet with your CPA. You might meet with your lawyers. You might meet with your senior vice presidents and say, listen, guys, these are some threats to us. And it's not going to be good around here if these things happen. We need a plan B. We need to plan ahead. We may be coming up into a recession. If we do, we need more cash to be able to float through. So how do we free up more cash? And so you get the CPAs working on stuff. You get your VPs working on streamlining and freeing up budget money. So then maybe a new competitor's coming in. Okay, guys, let's get marketing in here. All right, we have a new competitor. What are we going to do? So this is all game planning. This is all, where are we going to pass or run? Where's the receiver going to be? What's the play? And so this is all a game plan deal. And the SWOT analysis lets you look at yourself in the mirror, treat yourself honestly, and then make a plan that makes sense.
So in summary, if you're a company in really any industry and you're looking to improve, whether that be financially or culturally or anything like that, you need to do a SWOT analysis.
SWOT analysis is a must. Yeah, and you should do it probably yearly or even you could do it quarterly. That may be a little anal, but at least yearly, and take a look at it and really. I've always been a big fan of the retreats. So like when I was in the mortgage business, they had all the vice presidents in. They flew them up to Virginia, and it was a beautiful area. They rolled out the red carpet, and we had this week full of meetings, and we had keynote speakers come in. We had team building things going on, and it was a great time. And we actually did this kind of deal. We looked at what was going on in the industry. We looked at each other's areas and performance, and everybody helped the people who were underperforming and praised the people who were overperforming, right? And then we all got together and had a great time. And that's what it takes to build. And some of those people are still my friends. I was only there 8 years as a VP, but come on, that kind of team building on a yearly basis. So I made friends, and I still talk to some of them today.
And I mean, it takes time to build that kind of relationships, right? With,
Yeah, but you should build that kind of relationship.
No, absolutely.
And if you're a business owner, you shouldn't shy away from building relationships with your top people or any people in your company. Look, you can build a relationship without being inappropriate. Seriously. So you don't have to shy away from building relationships. You just got to be careful if you work with them, how you go about that, But you don't need to shy away from it. It's more fulfilling and rewarding if you can look at your top people that have been there for 6, 7, 10 years and say, we've had many fun evenings, cookouts with our families together. We've broke bread together, and we've done things that didn't involve work. We lived life together, and there's these deep connections that don't go away. And some companies just miss the boat on that.
Is there anything else that you would advise?
Yeah, I mean, and we'll talk more about it later, but on the next episode. But a mission statement and a vision. So once you've really looked at your SWOT analysis, looked at your strengths and weaknesses, your opportunities, your threats, and looked in the mirror, really analyzed yourself and your current situation, this really is the beginning stages of a strategic plan. So what you're doing is you're looking at yourself now, and you're starting to look off in the future a little bit with your opportunities and threats. but you have not looked at your vision yet. So you haven't looked at point B. You're at point A right now, analyzing point A, but you have not identified point B, nor have you plotted a course to get there. And so this first step, the SWOT analysis, is your point A, and figuring out what you want to offer the world, what your vision is for the future. Those are two things that you got to do. So your mission statement is just what it says. What are you here for? For instance, Google, their mission statement is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Mm. That's Google's mission statement.
You can go and do a Squirrel about Google if you want.
Yeah, I could, yeah. But a mission statement is, what's your mission? What's your goal? If you had your soldiers sitting here, what would you say? Okay, gang, here's our mission. Now speak. That's your mission. Levi's, the jean company?
Yep.
Their mission statement is, we will market the most appealing and widely worn casual clothing in the world. We will clothe the world. That's their mission statement.
That's interesting.
And so when you think about it's a broad brush stroke statement of what you are here on this earth to do as an organization.
Yeah.
And then the vision statement is a little different.
I was going to say, what's the difference?
We'll talk more about that. Yeah, we need to dig in. Your vision is... Let's squirrel for a second. I watched a TED Talk by this lady named Nancy Duarte, and she's freaking amazing. This is one impressive lady, let me tell you. And she talked about how these speeches had a cadence to them, kind of like a preacher, and how they churn and squeeze the audience, and they build this momentum, and then they get to this pinnacle moment, and then it dies back down. And so they have this cadence where it builds and then it goes back down, and then it builds and it goes back down. Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream speech was one that she highlighted. The Gettysburg Address was another one. And she said that she noticed there was a shape to these speeches. And when she realized the shape and analyzed what the shape meant, she could actually take the great speeches of all time, and they all had the same shape.
Yeah.
The Steve Jobs iPhone launch had the same shape. And so what it is you talk about what is and what could be, and what is and what could be. And you go through several of these and you keep churning back and forth what is and what could be. And then at the end, you paint this picture of this utopian environment where your goals and aspirations, your dreams, your vision has come true. And then you leave it there. Well, the vision statement goes a little bit further and talks a little bit about how you're going to get there. But for the most part, your vision statement is what you see happening in the next, let's say, 5 years. And it's an actionable vision, something that you can talk to people about, you can get them behind it, you can get people motivated to it. And it's more than this mission statement. Because, for instance, let's look at this. If Google's mission statement was to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. That's not,
No, absolutely, I agree.
I could yawn on that.
Right.
Like,
the words have to pop out on the page.
Not for a mission statement.
For a vision statement.
For a vision statement, the vision statement better be a lot more exciting than that.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not even just a vision statement. It's your vision. So it's not just a statement. It could be longer, and usually it is your vision for the company, and it could be paragraphs. basically, before we get into the weeds on that, maybe next time, let's just say that your vision is where you want to be. That's your point B explained. So if your SWOT analysis analyzes now, your vision analyzes later.
Yep.
And it's not happening yet thing. It's not currently in existence. This is something you want to create. And so if you're moving this big old beast from point A to point B, that's your point B.
Gotcha.
Yep. And we can dig into the vision statement, creating that vision board. It's kind of a vision board.
Yeah. I mean, why don't we make that like a part 2 of this episode for next time? Is we'll save that and really dig into the vision and what that means.
Perfect. Then I can roll out the method to get there too.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So for all that, all the marketing content you can possibly need from these two handsome fellas, this has been the Squirrel Marketing Podcast.
Absolutely.
It's been a good time. We'll see you next week.